My name is Charlotte Hayes. I'm 29 years old, and yesterday morning I found out my sister forged my signature on an $84,000 wedding contract. The paper shook in my hands, my coffee cup slipped shattered across the hardwood, and dark liquid bled toward my bare feet. My stomach dropped as I stared at the loops of her handwriting disguised as mine. The sound of my own breath felt too loud in the silence. One thought kept repeating they'd finally crossed a line I could never walk back from. But what my family didn't know was that the moment they stole my name, they also handed me the one weapon I needed. Before I continue, I want you to pause for a moment. Tell me in the comments where you're watching from, your city, your state, or even your country. And if you've ever been betrayed by the very people you thought you could trust, hit that like button. Don't forget to subscribe, because stories like mine, they don't just end, they echo. I grew up in a house where silence was louder than words, where love was measured out in teaspoons unevenly, and somehow I always ended up with the smaller share. My earliest memory isn't of birthdays or bedtime stories. It's of a dinner table under the harsh glow of the kitchen light, steam rising from a pot roast, the faint hum of the old refrigerator filling the pauses. My mother's hand, perfectly manicured, moved with precision. She spooned extra gravy onto Sienna's plate, slid the choicest piece of meat beside her potatoes. Then, without looking at me, she placed a smaller slice on mine. "Lottie's always careful with her figure," she said lightly, and the table chuckled. I forced a smile, stabbing my fork into limp green beans. I didn't know it then, but that small redistribution of dinner would become a pattern Sienna feasting while I learned to swallow hunger in silence. School was my escape, at least for a while. I loved the clean lines of geometry, the way numbers obeyed rules that people never seemed to. In 8th grade, I won first place at the district science fair. I can still feel the cheap carpet under my sneakers as I stood with my project board heart thudding when they called my name. Dad shook my hand briskly afterward, but Mom. She was too busy snapping photos of Sienna in the audience, her pink dress, her perfect curls. Later that night, scrolling through the family album, I realized there wasn't a single picture of me holding that blue ribbon. "I'll remember it," I whispered to myself, as if memory could replace proof. By high school, the divide between us had turned into a canyon. Sienna floated through adolescence like a golden child, tanning by the community pool, sneaking out to parties. I clocked double shifts at the ice cream shop, sticky with sugar and sweat-counting crumpled bills that were always meant for someone else. Mom would appear in the doorway of my room, leaning against the frame. "Your sister needs new shoes for cheer," she'd say. Or, "It's just a little loan, Lottie. You're the responsible one." That word responsible was polished into a compliment, but landed like a chain around my neck. I remember one July afternoon, the air thick with chlorine and sunblock. I'd just finished an 8-hour shift, feet aching, forearms sticky from spilled milkshakes. I cut through the pool parking lot on my walk home, and there was Sienna stretched out on a lounge chair, laughing with friends, a cherry popsicle dripping red down her wrist. She spotted me, waved lazily, and called out, "Thanks for covering, sis." Her friends giggled, not even knowing what she meant. My cheeks burned as I kept walking, the sweat on my back feeling heavier than the sun. I didn't know it then, but moments like that were carving lines inside me, etching quiet resentments that would later flare like wildfire. College should have been my chance to break free. I earned scholarships, scraped together savings, and moved into a tiny dorm room with cinder block walls and a rattling air conditioner. For the first time, I thought I could breathe. But freedom came with fine print. Halfway through sophomore year, Dad called. His business had hit a rough patch. Could I send part of my stipend home just until things pick up? My hands shook as I transferred the money. The next week, I saw photos online, Sienna in Cancun, drink in hand, tagging the location with palm trees swaying in the background. I wanted to scream. Instead, I told myself it was coincidence. But in my gut, I knew the truth. The betrayal wasn't loud. It was quiet, disguised as normalcy. Thanksgiving. My junior year, I came home to the smell of cinnamon rolls and roasted turkey. My suitcase sat unopened in the hall, while Mom fussed over Sienna's new boyfriend, sliding him extra slices of pie, telling everyone how proud she was of our star. When it came time for gifts, Sienna unwrapped a sleek new tablet while I received a sweater 2 sizes too big, the tag from a discount store still dangling. Dad clapped me on the shoulder, said, "You don't need gadgets, you've got your head on straight." The room laughed. I pulled the sweater tighter, itching at my skin. I swallowed it, but it carved deeper than I thought. There was one night that still clings to me like smoke. Senior year finals looming. I was up late at the campus library, the hum of fluorescent lights mixing with the scratch of pens. My laptop, my lifeline, buzzed with low battery. I plugged it in only to see the charge light flicker and die. I stared at the screen, praying it would hold until my project was done. The next week, Mom called. "Your sister needs help starting an online boutique. Just give her your laptop. You'll get another soon." Her tone was final. Within days, I was hunched over borrowed computers piecing together assignments while Sienna's store launched with glossy selfies and overpriced scarves. 2 months later, it folded, leaving me with nothing but missed sleep and a grade point average that limped across the finish line. But I pushed forward. I graduated. I moved into a one-bedroom apartment with peeling paint and dreams bigger than the rent I could barely afford. I thought maybe the pattern had ended. That adulthood would mean autonomy. I didn't know it then, but the cycle wasn't over. It was only getting sharper, the stakes higher, the wounds deeper. Because family doesn't stop taking just because you've grown, and mine wasn't done with me yet. Adulthood didn't arrive with fireworks. It crept in quietly, wrapped in utility bills and job applications, in the thud of student loan statements sliding through my mail slot. After graduation, I landed an internship at a boutique design firm in the city. My paychecks were thin, but I cherished the feeling of buying groceries with money I earned, of arranging secondhand furniture in my tiny apartment, of sipping coffee on a balcony that was mine. For a while, it felt like breathing after years underwater. But the phone calls never stopped. "Lottie, your dad's truck broke down," Mom said one evening, her voice coated with weary guilt. "He needs a little help covering the repairs." I checked my bank balance, the numbers already sagging from rent and loan payments. "I don't know if I can family first," she cut in sharp enough to sting. "You've always been reliable. Don't let us down now." Reliable, that word again. I wired the money, stomach twisting, as I ate ramen for dinner 3 nights in a row. I didn't know it then, but every loan was a brick in a wall trapping me in their expectations. My career began to take shape. I worked late nights drafting floor plans, tracing lines until my fingers cramped. My boss noticed. Soon I was managing small projects, then larger ones. Each promotion felt like a step out of the shadows. I remember standing in a newly finished apartment complex, the scent of fresh paint in the air, sunlight spilling through tall windows. "You did this, Julian," my colleague told me, clapping my shoulder. His faith felt like water in a desert, but even as my world expanded, my family found ways to pull me back. One Sunday dinner stands out in painful clarity. The table was crowded, steam rising from bowls of mashed potatoes, the scent of rosemary chicken thick in the air. Aunt Beverly chatted about neighborhood gossip, her bracelets clinking like wind chimes. Sienna waltzed in late, her perfume trailing, and slid into the seat beside Mom. "Guess who just got a new car?" she sang, tossing her keys onto the table. Shiny silver, brand new. Everyone gasped. Dad puffed up with pride. "Family sacrifices make moments like this possible." I froze. Because I knew who had made the sacrifice. My checking account told me so. $2 $500 transferred to Mom just until payday had disappeared into Sienna's down payment. "Congrats." I managed my throat raw. "Must be nice." Sienna smirked, oblivious or uncaring. "You'll get yours someday, sis." The words hit harder than they should. I forced a smile, but inside something cracked. I didn't know it then, but sarcasm would become my armor, thin but necessary. As my career grew, so did my sacrifices. When I finally scraped together enough for a vacation, just 1 week on a beach, a ticket I'd hidden in my desk drawer like contraband, Mom called. Sienna's credit card is maxed out. She found the perfect dress for a gala. "Could you cover it? She'll pay you back." I stared at the ticket in my hand, the ocean I'd dreamed of shimmering in unreachable blue. I canceled the trip, transferred the money, and told myself next year. Always next year. Christmas that year was bitter cold, the kind where the air burns your lungs. We gathered around the fireplace, stockings bulging. Sienna unwrapped designer boots, their leather gleaming. I opened a candle, set the wick already bent. "Don't look so glum," Dad said, misreading my silence. "You've got a good head on your shoulders. That's worth more than boots." I bit down on my tongue, tasting copper, and nodded. I swallowed it, but it carved deeper than I thought. The more I achieved, the more they demanded. When I was promoted to associate architect, Mom's voice trembled with pride, then quickly shifted. "Now you can really help your sister get settled. Weddings don't pay for themselves." Her casual assumption sliced through my happiness. I'd barely had time to celebrate, and already my success was being mortgaged for someone else's dream. Julian noticed the shadows under my eyes. One late night at the office papers scattered the hum of fluorescent lights above. He asked quietly, "When's the last time you did something just for you?" I laughed, bitter and short. "Does paying my own rent count?" He studied me, concern softening his features. "You're carrying more than your share. Be careful, Lottie. Even the strongest beams crack under too much weight." His words haunted me. By my late 20s, the pattern was cemented. Sienna played, I paid. Mom sighed, Dad demanded, and I complied. Each year, the ledger grew heavier: car repairs, tuition shortfalls, rent emergencies. I tracked them in a spreadsheet, once the numbers glaring like bruises. Over $40,000 gone, siphoned away in whispers and guilt trips. I didn't know it then, but the day would come when they wouldn't even bother asking. They would just take. And that's when everything would change. By the time I turned 29, I thought I had finally carved out a fragile balance. My apartment was small, but every corner held something I had chosen: a bookshelf crammed with design manuals, a framed watercolor I bought with my first real paycheck, a balcony crowded with potted herbs. Each object whispered independence. Each paycheck promised a future where I could stand on my own. But the balance was paper thin. 2 months before it all collapsed, we were at Sunday dinner again. The Hayes family table was always the same heavy oak scratches from years of meals, the chandelier buzzing faintly overhead. The smell of pot roast and garlic bread clung to the air, mixing with the sour tang of Dad's red wine. Sienna arrived late as always, in a swirl of perfume and pastel silk. She lifted her left hand the moment she stepped into the dining room, the diamond on her finger catching every drop of light. "Oh my God, look," Mom squealed, clutching her chest. "Isn't it stunning?" Dad beamed, topping off his glass. "Our baby girl deserves nothing less." I forced a smile, my fork heavy in my hand. The ring was enormous, obscene even, and I could practically feel the weight of its cost pressing down on me. "We were thinking," Dad said casually, eyes sliding toward me. "Since you just got that promotion." My stomach dropped. "Maybe you could help your sister have the wedding she deserves. Rosewood Estate is perfect, classic, elegant, just right for our family." The silence stretched. Everyone's eyes pinned me like insects on display. I felt my pulse in my ears. "I can't afford that," I said finally, my voice barely more than a whisper. "I'm still paying off my student loans." The silence that followed was worse than shouting. Mom sighed a long exhale of disappointment. "Don't you want your sister to be happy?" Sienna pouted, tracing the rim of her wine glass. "It's not like you can't manage. You're doing so well. Family takes care of family." Dad's words landed like a gavel, sealing my fate. I didn't know it then, but that night was the beginning of the end. Weeks passed, the pressure mounting. Texts from Mom about deposits, calls from Dad about commitments, Sienna sending me Pinterest boards of flower arrangements. I ignored them, clung to the hope that silence meant resistance. But silence, I would learn, was their invitation to move forward without me. One night, restless, I scrolled through my old bank statements, tracing years of withdrawals. I opened a new spreadsheet, titled it Family Ledger, and began listing every loan, every favor, every dollar siphoned away. The total stared back at me: over $42,000. My chest tightened. How had I let this happen? I should have known. I should have expected it. But nothing prepared me for the envelope. It arrived on an ordinary Tuesday morning, tucked between utility bills and junk mail. My coffee steamed beside me as I slit the flap open, thinking it was another brochure. Instead, the Rosewood Estate logo gleamed at the top of the page. My eyes skimmed the contract once, then again, my breath catching. $84,000. My signature scrawled across the bottom. Except it wasn't mine. Not really. The slant was too steep, the loops too round. But I knew those curls at the end of each letter. I had watched Sienna write enough birthday cards, enough fake apology notes to recognize her hand. The room spun. My coffee cup slipped, shattering on the floor liquid spreading dark across the hardwood. My generous gift. That's what the venue manager called it when I phoned in desperation, my voice trembling. Not often we see such a beautiful gesture between siblings. Tears blurred my vision as I hung up. A gesture I had never agreed to. A life I had never chosen. That night I couldn't sleep. The glow of my laptop lit the room at 3 a.m. As I dug through emails, and there it was, a thread between Mom, Dad, and Sienna. "She'll give in eventually," Mom had written. "She always does." "Remember the car repairs last year," Dad replied. "Within a week she caved. If not," Sienna chimed in, "we'll figure something out. She's got the credit for it." The words blurred, bile rising in my throat. They hadn't just hoped. They had planned to take regardless of my answer. I sat frozen, the quiet of my apartment pressing down on me. My chest felt hollow, my limbs numb. For years, I had told myself I was choosing to help, that sacrifice was my decision. But here in black and white was the truth. I was nothing more than a resource, an ATM with a pulse. I didn't know it then, but the forged contract wasn't just a theft of money. It was a theft of identity, of choice, of self. Something shifted inside me that night. A crack became a fault line. I whispered to the empty room, "This ends now." And for the first time in my life, I almost believed it. The morning after the forged contract, I woke to a buzzing phone. 3 new texts blinked on the screen, each from Sienna. Sienna just toured the bridal suite at Rosewood, stunning Sienna. Thinking we should upgrade the flower package. Only $1, $200 more. Sienna, thoughts attached, was a photo of her lounging in a velvet chair, champagne glass in hand, her grin wide and effortless. Her fiancé, Derek, was nowhere in sight. I stared at the screen, my chest burning. My name on a contract, my credit on the line, and she had the audacity to ask for upgrades. I didn't reply. 20 minutes later, Mom called. "Sweetheart, did you see Sienna's message? The venue needs an answer by tomorrow." "I'm not paying for flowers," I said, my voice low, shaking despite my effort to sound firm. Her sigh crackled through the speaker. "This attitude isn't like you, Lottie. People are already talking about how generous you've been. Don't make us look cheap now." "Mom, I never agreed to this." "Family supports family," she snapped, then softened her tone, dripping with practiced disappointment. "I just hope you're not becoming one of those selfish career women who forget where they came from." The call ended, but her words clung like smoke, choking me. That night, I checked my credit score, something I hadn't done in months. My pulse spiked, 40 points lower. A new, hard inquiry. A line of credit opened in my name. They hadn't just forged my signature. They were using my credit. I dropped my phone, my heart pounding so hard it hurt. A week later, Sunday dinner was worse than ever. The living room buzzed with chatter, the air thick with roast chicken and cologne. I barely had time to hang up my coat before Aunt Beverly swooped in with a teary-eyed hug. "You sweet, generous girl," she gushed, patting my cheek. "Funding Sienna's entire wedding, your mother told everyone. What a blessing you are." My stomach twisted. I opened my mouth to correct her, but Mom appeared instantly, her hand looping through my arm. "Come tell the Hendersons about the venue," she urged. "They're so impressed you insisted on Rosewood Estate." Insisted! The words stung like acid. I caught Dad by the fireplace, drink in hand, boasting to his golf buddies. My daughter wouldn't hear of anything less than the best. She said Sienna deserves a perfect day. I clenched my fists until my nails cut into my palms. Words I'd never spoken were now family lore. Sienna fluttered through the crowd in a pale pink dress glowing under the weight of everyone's admiration. She caught my eye and bounced over arms, cradling something large. "Look what arrived today," she sang, thrusting an elaborate floral arrangement into my arms. Crystal teardrops hung from silver-dusted roses, sample centerpieces. We'll need 30 tables at least. The planner says it's perfect. 30 tables, my voice cracked. How many people are you inviting? Mom slid in with her leather-bound planner. We're at 300 now. That feels right for our family, don't you think? 300 guests. $84,000. My name on the contract. My head spun my stomach sour. I excused myself, slipping onto the porch, gulping cold night air while laughter echoed inside. I didn't know it then, but silence was fueling their delusion. By saying nothing, I had become the villain in my own story. The pressure didn't stop at family. It bled into my work. One lunch break, Eleanor from my firm slid into the seat across from me at a cafe, her latte steaming between us. "Did you think more about Savannah?" she asked gently. "The firm is serious. The salary is 20% higher plus relocation." I stirred my coffee, the spoon clinking against ceramic. "It feels impossible." "My family." She leaned forward, eyes steady. "Lottie, you've told me enough. This isn't normal. It's exploitation. You deserve better." Her certainty rattled something loose in me. That evening, I confided in James, the only friend who knew it all. "They forged my signature," I whispered. $84,000. Silence. "Then, that's not family, Lottie. That's fraud. If you don't get out, they'll bleed you dry." His words were both dagger and balm. But the worst came 2 Saturdays later. Mom invited me to brunch. When I arrived, the smell of cinnamon rolls filled the air. A stranger in designer heels was already seated at the table, Marissa Williams' wedding planner extraordinaire. "At last," she said, brightly extending a manicured hand. "The generous sister footing the bill." My cheeks flamed. She slid a folder across the table. "Here are the updated invoices for your approval." I flipped through pages: custom champagne flutes, imported orchids, a string quartet. Each line bore a notation. "C. Hayes approval required." "These charges are excessive," I said slowly, my voice trembling. "What's this $10,000 lighting package?" Marissa frowned, confused. "But your sister said you specifically requested premium theatrical lighting for the dance floor." Sienna's face paled. "Right, Lottie. You love dramatic lighting," my pulse thundered. "Could I see all the contracts, please?" Andy's just being thorough. Mom cut in smoothly, offering Marissa more cinnamon rolls. Don't mind her. But I had already snapped photos of the invoices with shaking hands. Proof. Finally, proof. That night, James came over with takeout and legal forms. We spread papers across my coffee table. "In this state, you can break a lease if you prove identity theft," he explained. "You've got enough evidence. You can walk away." The words sat heavy in the air. Walk away. I wanted to. God, I wanted to. But I wasn't ready yet. I swallowed it, but it carved deeper than I thought. And soon, that wound would turn into something sharper, something my family would never see coming. The next week, the texts became relentless. My phone buzzed during meetings at midnight, even in the shower. "Mom, the caterer needs approval for the seafood tower. Sienna ice sculpture deposit due tomorrow, don't be late." "Dad, I raised you better than this. Don't embarrass us." I muted the group chat, but silence never stopped them. It only made them louder. At work, I pretended nothing was wrong. I drew up blueprints, reviewed budgets, nodded in meetings. But beneath my desk, my foot tapped in frantic rhythm. My credit score sank lower each day, like a body slipping beneath dark water. One evening, desperate, I pulled up my family ledger spreadsheet. $42,000 in past loans. $84,000 for the venue. $10,000 in fraudulent charges. The numbers blurred my vision, swimming. My hands shook so badly I spilled wine across the keys, crimson soaking into the keyboard. I slammed the laptop shut, chest heaving. The breaking point came at another Sunday dinner. The table gleamed with candles, the air thick with rosemary and roasted meat. Glasses clinked as relatives toasted to the wedding of the year. Dad raised his voice above the chatter. "My eldest daughter is making this all possible. Lottie, stand up, tell them how you insisted on nothing but the best." I froze the fork slipping from my fingers and clattering against porcelain. Dozens of eyes turned to me waiting for a performance I hadn't rehearsed. I began, but Mom cut in swiftly, her smile sharp as glass. She's modest, always has been. Don't let her fool you, this is all her doing. Laughter rippled around the table. I felt it like knives against my skin. Then Aunt Beverly, half drunk on Chardonnay, leaned forward. You know it's not the first time. Remember when Robert and Margaret used Lottie's college fund to cover Sienna's credit cards? The table fell silent. My heart stopped. What I whispered. Mom's face blanched. Dad coughed, shifting in his chair. Sienna rolled her eyes. God, Aunt Bev, you always bring up ancient history. But it wasn't history to me. It was theft I hadn't even known about. The room spun. I pushed back my chair, the scrape loud in the silence. Excuse me? I muttered, fleeing to the porch, the night air slicing against my skin. I didn't know it then, but that revelation was the crack that would split everything open. 2 days later, Derek Sienna's fiancé called me. Lottie, can we meet? His voice was taut, uncertain. We met at a quiet cafe. He looked sharper than usual, his tie-loosened eyes bloodshot. He leaned across the table. I've seen the invoices. I know the numbers don't add up. And I've seen the prenup my parents want me to sign. Prenup, I echoed. He nodded grimly. They're nervous. About Sienna. About your family's spending. He rubbed his temple. Frankly, so am I. But your name is all over the contracts. Why would you agree to this? I didn't, I said flatly. His eyes widened. You mean they forged my signature. For a long moment he said nothing, just stared at me as though seeing me for the first time. Then he exhaled low and shaky. I knew something was wrong, he muttered. But this changes everything. I sipped my coffee, the bitter taste grounding me. Welcome to the family, I said, my voice colder than I intended. The following Saturday, the planner returned with more invoices. Mom hovered nearby, pouring coffee, smiling too brightly. Lottie, darling, could you initial these? Just routine paperwork. My hand hovered over the pen, every nerve screaming. Then slowly, deliberately, I set the pen down. No. The word was small, but it detonated like a bomb. Mom's smile cracked. Excuse me, I'm not signing anything. Not another paper, not another check. The room froze. Sienna's chair screeched back as she stood, eyes blazing. You can't back out now! Do you know how this will make us look? My pulse hammered. Not my problem. The silence was suffocating. Then Dad's voice, low and dangerous. Family takes care of family. That's how we raised you. I met his gaze for the first time in years, unflinching. Then maybe you should have raised me differently. The words hung in the air, heavy and irreversible. That night, I sat at my desk, surrounded by piles of statements, contracts, and screenshots. Each piece of evidence was another brick in the wall I was building, not around me, but between us. My fingers trembled as I organized them into folders: forgery, fraud, financial exploitation. For years, I had been the responsible one, the quiet one, the reliable one. But now I was something else entirely. I didn't know it then, but I was already preparing my revenge. The conference room at Rosewood Estate smelled faintly of lemon polish and roses. A chandelier glimmered overhead, scattering prisms of light across the long mahogany table. It was the kind of room designed for power, for decisions written in ink and sealed with champagne. I stood near the door, clutching a leather folder to my chest. Inside, months of screenshots, contracts, and recordings. My pulse beat against the edges of the paper. Mom swept in first pearls, gleaming her smile wide enough to hide the tension in her jaw. Dad followed, puffed up with authority, adjusting his cufflinks as though this were his boardroom. Sienna trailed behind in a blush dress phone already angled for selfies. Derek stiff beside her, his jaw tight. Aunt Beverly lingered near the back, clutching her purse already a little flushed from wine. The wedding planner, Marissa, spread glossy folders across the table. We're here to finalize the last details, she chirped. Lighting, catering upgrades, guest count 300 confirmed, Mom interrupted smoothly. And Lottie has approved all premium packages. All eyes turned to me. My throat tightened. I set the folder on the table with a deliberate thud. No, I said. The word sliced through the air sharp as glass. Marissa blinked. Excuse me, I never approved any of this. In fact, I flipped open the folder, sliding out a stack of papers. I have evidence my signature was forged. Evidence that every single one of you knew. Sienna laughed high and brittle. God, Lottie, stop being dramatic. I slid the first photo across the table, a screenshot of the contract, the forged signature beside my real one. Do those look the same to you, Silence? Next, an email chain projected from my laptop onto the screen. Mom's words glared in black and white. She'll give in eventually. She always does. Gasps rippled through the room. Aunt Beverly's eyes widened. Margaret, you wrote that Mom's face drained of color. That's taken out of context. I ignored her, sliding forward the next piece, a recording from brunch. Marissa's voice played tinny through my phone speaker. But your sister said you specifically requested premium theatrical lighting. Then my own voice firm. Could I see all the contracts, please? The silence afterward was suffocating. Finally, I laid down the ledger. My family ledger. Dozens of entries, years of sacrifices, every debt tallied. $42, $387 in loans, plus $84,000 in fraudulent contracts. The total glared up at them. Enough, I said, my voice shaking but loud. This ends today. Derek leaned forward, his face pale. Is this true? He asked, his voice low, dangerous. Sienna's bravado faltered. She's twisting it, answer me. Derek snapped. Her lip trembled. She opened her mouth, but no words came. Marissa cleared her throat awkwardly. If the signature is forged, we can't move forward without immediate payment. The next installment is due tomorrow, $22,000. If it's not received, the reservation is canceled. Gasps rose again, sharper this time. Dad surged to his feet. This is your responsibility, Lottie. Family takes care of family. I rose too, my knees steady beneath me for the first time. No, family doesn't steal. Family doesn't forge signatures, and family doesn't destroy one daughter to glorify another. The room went silent. I didn't know it then, but Derek's next words would shatter what little remained of the Hayes family facade. Derek's chair scraped harshly against the floor as he stood, the sound cutting through the thick silence. His eyes, dark and unblinking, locked on Sienna. If this is true, he said slowly, his voice measured like a blade, then I need a prenuptial agreement. Today. No wedding without it. The words landed like a thunderclap. Sienna's face drained of color. A prenup? Are you kidding me? Her laugh was jagged, desperate. You can't be serious. I've been serious since the day I met you. Derek shot back, his voice sharp. But I'm not marrying into lies. Not with this level of debt and fraud hanging over us. Mom lurched forward, her pearls swinging. Don't be ridiculous, Derek. This is a family misunderstanding. Family misunderstanding. Aunt Beverly barked, cheeks, flushed eyes wide. Margaret Robert, you used Charlotte's college fund years ago, didn't you? To pay off Sienna's debt. Gasps rippled around the room. My head whipped toward them. My college fund. Dad bristled, his face reddening. It was a difficult time. You managed without it. Managed. The word tore something inside me wide open. I felt years of swallowed resentment rise like bile scorching my throat. You stole from me before I even knew it, and now you've stolen again. Sienna slammed her palms onto the table. This is supposed to be my day, my wedding. Why are you trying to ruin it? I looked her in the eye, the rage in me sharp and clear. I didn't ruin it, Sienna. You did, with every lie, every theft, every forged signature. Her lip curled. You're jealous. You always have been. I laughed, cold, hollow. Jealous of being your bank account, your doormat, your insurance policy. No, Sienna, I'm done. The planner shuffled her papers, her hands trembling. If payment isn't secured by tomorrow morning, Rosewood Estate will terminate the contract. Dad rounded on me, his voice booming. "Don't do this, Charlotte! Don't you dare walk away! You'll regret it." I straightened my shoulders, no longer bowing under his weight. "The only thing I regret is letting you take from me for this long." The silence was electric. The chandelier above seemed to buzz louder, the scent of roses suddenly cloying. Derek cleared his throat. "If this wedding goes forward, it won't be with this level of deceit. Sign the prenup, Sienna, or it's over." Her mouth opened closed, then twisted into a snarl. "How dare you? How dare you?" The phrase echoed absurd in the room, thick with evidence of her crimes. I gathered my folder, my fingers no longer trembling. "I've sent copies of everything to my lawyer, and to the venue, and to the credit bureaus. There's no going back now." Mom's face contorted. "Charlotte, please, don't destroy us." I paused at the door, turning just enough for them to see the cold smile curving my lips. "I'm not destroying you," I said. "I'm setting myself free." And with that, I walked out of the glittering room, the sound of my heels striking marble louder than any applause. Behind me, voices erupted, Sienna shouting, Dad roaring, Mom weeping, but I didn't turn back. Not once. For the first time in my life, I wasn't the responsible daughter, the reliable sister, the family ATM. I was something else, and the weapon they had handed me was finally mine to use. The night air outside Rosewood Estate was crisp, scented faintly of roses from the gardens, but to me it smelled like freedom. My heels clicked across the stone path as I walked toward my car, each step lighter than the last. For years I had left family gatherings with my chest caved in my throat, raw from swallowed words. Tonight, I walked away with my head high and a folder of proof pressed against my side like armor. I sat in the driver's seat, hands on the steering wheel, but didn't start the engine. My phone buzzed violently against the console. Mom, Dad, Sienna, even relatives I hadn't spoken to in months. Missed calls, frantic texts. "Come back. Don't do this. We raised you better." I let the screen go dark. Instead, I opened my laptop. The cursor blinked at the top of a draft email. I attached the documents, the ledger, the screenshots, the recordings, and addressed it not just to Rosewood Estate, but to the extended family who had been fed lies about my generosity. My finger hovered over send, heart thundering. Then I clicked. It was done. By the time I pulled into my apartment complex, the fallout had already begun. My cousin texted, "What's going on? Aunt Margaret told us you were paying. Now everyone's saying the wedding is collapsing." Another message popped up from Derek's mother. "Thank you for clarifying. We had our suspicions." I didn't respond. Not yet. Instead, I walked through the quiet halls of my building, the scent of someone's takeout drifting through the air. Inside my apartment, the boxes I'd started packing leaned against the wall. Savannah awaited 3 weeks until my start date, a clean slate of paycheck that belonged only to me. I set my folder of evidence on the counter and pulled out one piece. I hadn't yet shared a copy of the forged contract annotated with arrows pointing to the differences in handwriting. I taped it to my fridge, a reminder that survival sometimes means putting proof where you can't ignore it. The phone buzzed again. A voicemail this time, Dad's voice like, "Gravel family takes care of family. Don't think this is over." I played it twice, then saved it under a new folder labeled Leverage, because I knew this wasn't over. Not really. The next morning, the gossip had spread faster than wildfire. Aunts and uncles flooded social media with confusion. Guests posted cryptic statuses hearing rumors about the Chambers Hayes wedding. The cracks in their narrative widened with every passing hour. By noon, Sienna called her voice raw and jagged. "You ruined everything." I leaned against the window, sunlight warming my face. "No, Sienna, I just told the truth." "You'll pay for this," she hissed, then hung up. I stared at my reflection in the glass, the woman looking back sharper, steadier than the one I remembered. For years they had taken from me money, credit time, even my voice. But now, with one act of defiance, I had taken something back. And I wasn't done. The family ledger wasn't just proof. It was a map, a record of every betrayal, every theft. And someday soon, I would decide whether to keep it locked in a drawer or hand it to someone who could make it matter in court. As twilight fell, I stepped out onto my balcony, the city glowing beneath me, a hum of traffic and possibility. My phone buzzed again, another message from Mom, this one softer. "We never meant for it to go this far. Call us, please." I didn't reply. I slipped the phone face down on the railing and let the night wind lift my hair. Some bridges burn for a reason. And as the smoke curled toward the sky, I felt for the first time the dangerous thrill of being free. They thought they had destroyed me. But what they didn't know was that they had just handed me the one weapon I needed. If you've ever felt like the outsider in your own family, the one carrying the weight while everyone else takes, then you know how heavy that silence can be. My story isn't just about betrayal. It's about finding the courage to walk away, even when it feels impossible. So tell me in the comments, have you ever had to set boundaries with the people closest to you? And don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs to hear it, and subscribe. Because trust me, this story isn't over.